Hi guys, today we're going to continue reading The Storm Runner, chapter 15. I could tumble through the air in slow motion, so slow I could see myself in the skyscraper's glass exterior. Then my reflection vanished, and instead I saw an image of my mom repeated in every window. She was walking on the shore of the forest lake with a tall, dark haired man. They held hands, laughing like a couple of kids. Then they skipped stones. It was kind of embarrassing to watch. I'd figured it out by now. The guy was my dad. It was the same man who had been on the top of the pyramid, warning me not to give in to Alpooch. And he looked normal, not like a demon runner or a monster or anyone I would want to be related to. At least, not on the outside. They sat near a fire under the stars. I was so lost in the image, I stopped thinking about the skull busting cement I was plummeting towards. It was as if this vision of my parents was a net that could save me. The man put his arms around my mom and whispered into her ears. I couldn't hear what he said. All I know is my mom's face lit up. It was the same instant he was gone, vanished like a puff of smoke. Mom, I called out. She was there in every window, but she couldn't see me. The world sped up again, and I was in a free fall. Alpooch's words echoed in my ears. It's done, old friend, and now he's mine. As the crowd rose up to meet me, I felt someone shaking me. Zane, wake up! Brooks! I opened my eyes. It was night, and I was back in my room, flat out on my bed. Brooks hovered over me. Did I mention that her eyes changed from amber to chocolate brown when she's scared? It's about time. Brooks socked me right in the arm. How could you sleep like this? I couldn't help it, I smiled. Great to see you too. She blew a long piece of hair out of her face, clearly annoyed. How did we get here? What happened? I swear I could have barreled into her and hugged her to death. Okay, bad choice of words. But you wouldn't believe how happy I was to see her breathing. You don't remember? I sat up, patting my dry chest and legs to make sure nothing was broken. I remember you pulling me through the water, and her mind was turning. The eclipse. She turned back to me, with terrified eyes, and whispered, You let him out. I couldn't lie. I didn't have a choice. I had to save you and Rosie. I jumped up, rushed out into the living room. Rosie, come out, girl. I frantically checked everywhere, under the beds, in the cabinets, behind the TV. Where was she? Alpooch had promised. Zane. Brooks was right behind me. What's wrong with you? Rosie! I raced outside and whistled for her, but she was nowhere to be seen. Rosie! Nothing but silence answered me. Heat clawed its way through my chest. We had a deal, I shouted to the moonlight sky, as if Alpooch could hear me. Brooks placed her hands on my shoulder. Zane. I was borderline hysterical. Maybe it was like post-traumatic stress disorder. That moment when the reality of everything hit me and I wasn't built for the impact. How could I have been so stupid? But why would Alpooch give me back one and not the other? Because he's twisted. Bitter God who can't be trusted, Brooks whispered. Her hands flew to her mouth. Holy Kay, I heard your thoughts. Whoa, I jumped back. This happened before when we were in the pool, but I thought it had been a fluke. I didn't want her in my head. What was wrong? It was wrong on so many levels. Can you hear mine? She asked. Nope. How about now? She took my hands. I'm thinking you're the biggest idiot on the planet to make a deal with Alpooch. I jerked my hands free. How'd you do that? Brooks blinked fast. It must have happened when we were touching. She paced nervously. Then she froze and her gaze met mine. Holy Kay, I know who your dad is. If something's bad, don't tell me. I clapped my hands and put them over my ears. It's not a demon. I lowered my head. Yeah, I kind of figured that, I said. I was thinking of the man in the vision of my mom. It's a magician. No. Okay, I braced myself. Then what am I? What am I? She stared at me, scanning my neck, my face, my chest. Tell me, but it's impossible. Brooks, you're part of God. I almost laughed. Me, part of God? Like a desert tilted. And I felt lightheaded. Maybe her brain had gotten fried when she was knocked out. There was a higher chance of that being true than of me equaling one half of God. No way. Only gods can do telepathy. Telepathy. My knees buckled and I stumbled. She caught me by the elbows. Are you sure? I asked. 1,000%, Zane. You are the son of a Maya god. Holy smokes, that sounds kind of cool. Which one? I asked. Please don't say some evil guy like Puke. I have no idea, but I get it now. No wonder why you had the ability to release Al Pooch. I mean, the prophecy was clear, a powerful innocent with ancient blood. I wasn't following. Think about it. She said excitedly. I could see in her mind churning as she paced. The gods put him away, so maybe that meant only a god could let him out. Whoa, you never mentioned that before. I didn't figure it out till just now. I was forced on this powerful innocent pot, but I didn't go any further. Plus, a god is never innocent. So it wouldn't have made no sense. She shook her head. The gods probably thought their plan was foolproof, but they all hate Alpooch. None of them would ever set him free. Okay, so Brooke's logic sort of made sense. It wasn't all that different from middle school. There were cool kids band together against someone they can't stand. She took a deep, shaky breath. They didn't count on you coming along. Did you hear that, gods? You got duped. What's an innocent? I asked. I didn't understand before, but I get it now. It's someone who has the knowledge of his lineage. And in your as if you're not ruined by your power yet. Power? But I didn't have any. Unless you counted seeing in the dark. And now I guess telepathy. So, if gods can read minds, I said, then how can you read my thoughts? I Norse gods? Nope. Brooks dropped her gaze. I mean, you trust me, or else you wouldn't let me in. It was dangerous to have Brooks in my head, knowing all of my secrets. Like I thought she was beautiful. And no offense, but how do I keep you out? Her eyes searched my face. I could tell you I'd hurt you. Just put up an evil wall. Easy as that? She spun on her heels and began walking back to the house. I followed, not knowing what to say. I mean, she could blame me. It was like reading somebody's diary, but way worse. Brooks, hang on. I couldn't keep up with her. Yes, some demon god I was. You think I want you in my head? She whispered around to my face. You think you're the only one who has problems? The only one who's in danger? Well, let me tell you. Her face was red with anger as she poked me. Not everything is about you, Zane. Brooke froze in the mid-thought. Her finger was still on her chest. Holy K, you made a deal to save me? You were sort of out cold. I don't think your memory is exactly running on all cylinders. Tears filled up in her eyes, and she shook me in the arms. You're such an idiot. Oh boy, I hated it when Mom cried, and this felt infinitely worse. Don't cry, I said, patting her shoulders as if they would stop the fireworks. It's fine. I couldn't let you die. You were like family now, right? She threw her arms up around me, squeezing me so tight I thought she might choke me to death. Her hair was soft and it smelled like lavender. I felt like a wooden soldier's arm stiff by my side. Was I supposed to hug her back? I mean, I definitely wanted to, but when she let me go, the scowl was back. I can't let you be that monster's soldier for me. So that's not happening. Wait a second. I was glad to change the subject, but how come I was never able to do telepathic with anyone before now? Brooke shrugged. Maybe it's because you've been touched by our world or by the magic, or maybe because of the eclipse. I don't know for sure. Then she grabbed my arm and turned my hand so she could see the inside of my wrist. A black symbol was inked there like a tattoo. A quarter-sized skull with sleeping eyes. He's claimed your life, Brooks whispered in horror. I gripped my wrist, covering the tattoo, knowing it was more than a design. It was a binding promise. Zane. Brooks threw her fists into her hip. If you think I'm going to let you turn yourself into that evil, stinking god and spend your eternity in the land of fear, then you're not, she blinked. We're going to stop him first, I said. Chapter 16. It's my stupid fault, Brooks said. If I had done my part, we wouldn't be here right now. I ruined everything. No, you'd be in the underworld swimming in Pus River, I mumbled. My eyes scanned the desert. I needed a walking stick since I lost another cane to another lousy monster. At this rate, I was going to need a jumbo pack. I broke off a long branch from the creosote bush. It was skinny, but better than nothing. Zane, Brooke's voice was small. I have to tell you something. But before she could say anything, Hondo threw open the back door. We've got a problem. What's up, Hondo? I asked. There's a grand chicken that has been pecking at the front door for the last 2 hours, and it won't go away. 3 days ago, I would have considered a prank. But after everything that had happened, I started for the door. Let's go see this Polo Loco of yours. Minutes later, the three of us stood on the front porch looking down at the three-size, too big chicken that wasn't acting like a chicken at all. It didn't bop around with its head down. It hurried back and forth in a frenzy, spreading its wings, clinging and clicking like a storm. It's rabid, Hondo said, like in those scary movies when the animals killed everybody. Have you ever seen Cujo or the birds? Brooks cocked her head. Do you think it's trying to tell us something? Forgetting that Hondo was standing there, I asked Brooks, can you use your bird brainier? I mean, your bird connection? And figure out what it's saying? You think it's all birds speak the same? Brooks tilted her head proudly. Please. Hondo gave me a weird look, and then he opened his mouth to say something, and the chicken turned and bolted towards Miss Cab's house. Hey, wait! I shouted. We all hurried after the bird. The chicken pecked at Miss Cab's front door, then tilted its head at me. It rolled its eyes, but before it went back to striking the door with its beak, I think it wants to go inside, I said. Brooks rang the doorbell and peered through the front window. Nobody was there. Hondo turned the doorknob. It was unlocked. He raised a brow and gave me a sly smile. Let's see what the polo wants. Miss Cab would string us up by our ears for going in uninvited. But before I could protest, the chicken bolted inside over to the living room, jumped onto the coffee table, stomping and clucking loudly. Hondo looked around. This place is creepy, Zane. How can you work here? Then he picked up the box of eyes. I hollered, stop! But it was too late. He had already opened it. And his face turned green. They're moving. He dropped the box, and the eyeballs rolled onto the floor. And then my iron bicep champion wrestler uncle passed out. Brooks hurried over to a pillow on his head while flapping her hands back and forth across. Hondo! Hondo! The chicken hopped off the table and hurried around the living room, picking up the eyeballs, one at a time, putting them back in the box, except for one unfortunate eye that went splat in its beak. That's when I realized Ms. Cab. She stuck the eyeball in a place where nobody nodded slowly. How the heck had she turned into a chicken? Then I remembered what Mulan had said, that all the seers had been taken care of. If the seers had all been turned into animals, they couldn't warn the gods about Alpuke's evil plan. Hondo stirred awake, rubbing his head. Necesito un médico. Tequila. Necessitio, tequila. He was like my mom. Whenever he got freaked out or was mad during a wrestling match, Spanish flew from his mouth like hurricane winds. As I helped him sit up, I said, pretty sure Mrs. Cab doesn't have any tequila. Do you really want me to call a doctor? Hondo shrugged me away. Who said anything about a doctor? When Mr. Ortiz walked in the door, ¿Qué pasa? Where's Antonia? Brooks and I shared a glance. Miss Cab jumped off the sofa and ran back and forth, squawking like a bird on fire. She was trying to tell me something, but what? Hondo got to his feet groggily, rubbed his head. Tell that thing to shut up. It's giving me a headache. I sat on the sofa and began to pet Mrs. Cab's feathery head, thinking that maybe would calm her down. She jabbered on and on until her clucks began turning into words like, balk, what balk? Do I have to do it to balk, balk, balk? Get your attention, Zane. You can talk, I shrieked. Everyone went stone still and stared at me. Even Miss Cab stopped fussing. Oh, Zane, she said. You can hear me. Thank the gods. And then she blinked and her beak performed an oh my, that means I'm part of God. The words fell like marbles in my mouth. Telepathy. The others rushed towards me with a flurry of questions. It can talk? You can understand chicken speak? What do you mean, part of God? That was Hondo. I held my hand up to silence them. This chicken is Miss Cab, and she's talking to me now. I can't hear her over you, so your voice is. So stop jibber jabbering. Yeah, they looked at me, and they had just fallen off a loony brick truck. Everyone but Brooks. Miss Cab stretched her neck. I resume petting her. I was kidnapped, Zane, at the crossroads to Exabalah. Some stupid lower demon of the underworld threw a sack over my head, she shuddered. Me, secret keeper of the great soothsayer. She spoke as I translated it for everyone. She continued to talk fast, so it was hard to keep up. But every time I tried to get her to slow down, she gave me an evil eye and chatted even faster. Exabalah isn't what it used to be, she sputtered. Xtab has taken over, set up new rules, and redecorated the place. And let me tell you, she has no taste. When I translated, Hondo raised a brow and looked around Miss Cab's cluttered living room, which was filled with different sized plastic snow globes from all over the world. Right? No taste, he muttered. Apparently, when the good old Alpooch was sent away, the gods of Iastab, the keeper of the souls of the warriors and women who died in childbirth, took his place as the ruler of the underworld. Miss Cab said she had a battle with a few of other gods to win the throne of the dead, which made those gods good and mad. But more importantly, she went on, some of the demons were like double agents playing both sides. Someone had somehow learned of the prophecy of fire and told Ixtab all about you, Zane. But who? After I translated for everyone, Hondo rubbed his forehead. Hang on there, Zane. This crazy talk. Who the heck is Ixtab and Alpooch? Mr. O stuffed his hands in his pockets. Ay Dios, I know magic when I see it. He glanced at Miss Cab and said, I still think you're Hermosa. To which she squawked, oh, Lord of Fright, this man is a senseless fool. I didn't translate that part. Miss Cab lowered her voice as if anyone could understand her and said, why is there a Noel here? I told you not to trust her. She saved my life, I said. Miss Cab tried to harahump, but Cluckin said, by this point, there was no use trying to keep everything else a secret. So I told Mr. O and Mr. Hondo about the prophecy, making Hondo promise he wouldn't tell Mom. I even told them the part about Los Angeles and leaving out the deal I made with Alpooch because Hondo would punch my lights out. Maybe I do need some tequila now, Hondo said, looking a little pale. My mind went into overdrive. So Ixtab was the one who sent out the little assassin Ulux. She wanted to prevent me from fulfilling the prophecy so she wouldn't have to fight Alpooch for the throne. Brooks chewed on her bottom lip, pacing the room. What was her deal? How come she was so quiet? I was seriously starting to make me nervous. Miss Cab's wings were trembling and she blinked at me. Tell me every detail of when you let Alpooch out, and even how the monster looked, probably more hideous than before. He always was the ugliest god, or at least in the top 10. I didn't want to talk about it in front of everyone else, especially Brooks. So I let down my guard and allowed Miss Cab to hop. Hopping, it would work, like it did with Brooks. Can you hear me? Miss Cab cocked her head and hopped in the air, yes. I brought her onto my lap and told her everything. Leaving out the soldier of death part, I had to let him out, otherwise Brooks would have died. I felt something in the moment he was released. Miss Cab shook her skinny chicken head. The earth stood still for a split second. Of course, none of the gods would notice, being such dense, self-observed beings. But we seers, we knew. Problem is, there was nothing we could do about it because we couldn't pinpoint his location. But it was like he went off the grid. I lost all contacts with all the other seers, which tell me that they're all in non-human form too. What is she saying? Hondo asked relentlessly. The gods are dense, and the other seers are probably chickens too, I said. Brooks folded her arms and nodded. They are all kinds of dense, except for the Kalulakalans, of course. Gee, that made me feel really good about being a halfer, unless, of course, I was a Holy K's son. What had Brooks said? He was the god of coolness. Yep, could definitely see the resemblance there. How would I, how would you know? I asked. Do you hang out with the gods? There were still so many secrets swirling around Brooks, I couldn't help but wonder what she wasn't telling me. No, Brooks said. I read all about them and rolled her eyes. Everyone knows they changed when they came to America. Changed how? Hondo asked. Brooks fidgeted with the hem of her jacket, like she forgot the old ways, the lost their edge. I grunted. They seem pretty edgy to me, or at least old Puke does. Looking back at Miss Cab, why would he take me to LA? He could have picked anywhere interesting and then he picked the busiest city? You said he liked chaos. Her eyes went wide. Of course, chaos will hide him from the other gods, and vice versa. She flapped her wings. He said someone is hiding from him. I repeated everything Miss Cab was saying while pondering who Alpooch could have been referring to. Hondo slugged me in the arm. He hadn't stopped looking at me with a goofy smile since the big demon god reveal. I knew there was something different about you, he said. You did? Mr. O took off his hat and rubbed his bald head. When you were a baby, Hondo said, you used to do loco things like talk in full sentences before you were even a year old. And the one time you touched your mom's hot curling iron and didn't get burned, another time we found you crawling in the desert towards the volcano. He ran his hand through his hair excitedly. Now it makes sense. You really are a freak. His face got serious. I mean, in a good way. So, do you have any superpowers? I mean, beyond creeping on people's minds? Seeing in the dark, I guess? I thought about the recent storms. They always came out when I was scared or angry. Had I caused those too? What about the freak storm in LA? What had that been about? Did it give someone to do with my dad making an appearance? I hadn't seen Hondo this excited since the last World Wrestling Championship 3 years ago, when he won $1,000 betting on the Bone Crusher. It felt so good to share all the weirdness of the last few days with him and Mr. Ortiz. If only Mom were here, maybe she would fill in the gaps. But I couldn't let her get mixed up in all this. Where was she, anyways? I was hoping she was okay. Hondo slugged his arm over his shoulders. So, how do we take down Sonofa? I mean, the stinking one. Ms. Cab set a wing in my hand. I'm sorry I failed you. I let out a big breath. You tried, at least. Did you find anything out about Rosie? She blinked her small chicken eyes, and I could see the sadness there. I sent the messages everywhere. If any of my friends see her, Zane, they'll try to protect her. My heart wedged itself into a big hole in my chest. Thanks, Mrs. C. By the way, where did you put that gateway map? I asked, hoping she wouldn't catch it on my palms. It's in the bookcase, like always. Why? I walked over and pulled out the scroll. I unrolled it in front of her and then took hold of her wings again. Show me how to use it. Absolutely not, Ms. Cab said. Do you know what others would do to get their grubby hands on this map? I knew we were running out of time. Alpooch had given me 3 moons. And if this map could get us to where I wanted to go, I needed to know how to read it. Mr. Ortiz, I looked up at him. Yes, can you watch over Miss Cab? A broad smile formed. His eyes danced. Claro que sí. Ms. Cab shook her head vigorously. Zane, I don't need a babysitter. I am a great Meyer seer, and he's just a pathetic human. My mouth turned off. No offense, Ms. Cab, but you're a chicken right now. That silenced her for a few seconds. At least take an eyeball. For what? So I can visit you in your dreams. So I can keep an eye on that girl. Seriously, I didn't want Miss Cabs in my dreams. And I, for sure, didn't want to carry around one of her eyeballs. You need my guidance, she screamed. I let go of her wing, picked up the wall in my head, so her words just spun into clucking. Where you going? Mr. O asked. Brooks and I shared a glance. Can you read this map? I asked. It's the gateway map, she said, her voice a trembling. I can read some glyphics, not all. She ran her fingers along the distressed edges. I think I could figure it out. Miss Cab was squawking at the top of her lungs. Hondo popped his knuckles. I'm coming too. No way, I said. You want Mom to lose her mind? Call the police, he said. It's the only way. I'll leave her a note telling her we went out fishing for the weekend. It'll buy us time. And besides, he said, flexing his biceps, you're going to need my luchador moves. He was right. I couldn't involve Mom, and I couldn't just up and leave. She'd lose it for sure. Plus, I didn't need the attention of being a missing kid. Fine, I said reluctantly. Mr. O took my arm gently. Before you go, I have something that might help you on your journey. Come. So I followed him out, but not before I grabbed my smallest and least creepy eyeball that I could find.